Today I'm here with Thom Singer, director at Stanton Chase, executive search and leadership consultant. Is that what it is? A search and
Yeah,
leadership consultants with an
yeah.
S?
Stanton Chase, Stanton,
Stanton Chase.
Stanton Chase. Yeah,
Yep, executive search and leadership consultants.
yeah,
Keynote speaker and host of 4 podcasts and launching a new one soon. Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
That's about right.
All right. Hi, today I'm here with Thom Singer, director of Stanton Chase, executive search and leadership consultants. He's a keynote speaker and a host of 4 different podcasts, and Tom's launching another one soon. Thom, can you give us a little bit about your background story?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I spent my career working in sales and marketing for professional services firms. So I worked for a big law firm for 5 years, actually 2 firms, and then I worked for a bank and then a consulting firm. And then in the middle of the recession, April 1st, 2009, I was laid off as the director of marketing for a consulting firm. And I decided to launch out and start my own business as a professional speaker and master of ceremonies for corporate events and association events. And I did that for 11 years. And then during the pandemic, the live speaking world went away. And I joined Stanton Chase, which I'd actually talked to them a few years earlier about doing business development and executive search for them. And it's the best company I've ever worked for. And so I'm looking forward to building my career there. And at the same time, I'm keeping my speaking business going, working with associations and companies.
Great. Well, let's jump into it. What are your top 3 principles that you contribute to your success?
You know, I always say that the number one thing that is my principle, if you will, really came from my dad. And that was, he always said that no matter what's going on, sometimes you're going to hit roadblocks. You got to be scrappy. And boy, I tell you, I learned that over the past 12 months when my speaking business sort of went from pretty robust to almost zero because the pandemic closed down the meetings industry. And the way I had earned my living for 11 years at that point had been getting up on stage, giving speeches and getting a check. And so while there was some virtual work and I sort of pivoted to doing a lot of virtual master of ceremonies work, it wasn't the same for me. It wasn't as highly paid. There didn't seem to be as much work in the niche where I had fit in so well before. And so I had to, as we say, get scrappy. And I ended up picking up a couple of podcasts where I'm the paid host. So I work as the talent for two associations and a company. And then I joined Stanton Chase. So I think the number one principle is if you're going to be out there, you're going to face some crap in the way. You just got to get scrappy. You just got to roll up your sleeves, throw some spaghetti against the wall and keep fighting every day. So that'd be my number one principle.
Well, let's take that one apart because I think you're right. You don't know what comes ahead, and it could be things that throw big curves at you or just flip things upside down. How do you do that? Because I feel like there's the immediate reactions, always the surprise element. Maybe you get into a state of disappointment, depression, whatnot. But I'm curious, how do you mentally walk your way out through that to get to that scrappy mindset to?
Well, if the pandemic had come along 2 or 3 years earlier, I don't know that I would have been there. I don't know that I was mentally in a place where I could have handled watching, a couple $100,000 a year of income evaporate in 6 days. Literally everything that I was going to speak at for 6 months canceled or postponed their events in a week-long period. So, however, about 4 or 5 months before we hit the shutdown and the social distancing and then the end of live meetings for a while, I had taken up meditation and sort of the study of Taoism. And some of those principles, while I hardly would say I fully understand Taoism at all, the study is, I've only been at it a year. Some of the principles in it was just really be like water, go with the flow. If something gets in your way, you just sort of flow around it. And, you can't move things. So therefore you just have to figure out your way to do it. And then meditation allowed me to sort of calm my mind. One of the problems I think I would have had a year earlier is I would have been caught in the woe is me. What's going to happen? How am I going to pay the mortgage? I got a kid at an Ivy League school. What's going to happen, to being able to pay her tuition? How am I going to do these things? And meditation allowed me just to step back and just sit in the moment. And then what I did that was my smartest move was April 1st. I allowed myself like 2 weeks to sort of cry and be depressed and hide in the corner and just rock like a baby. And then on April 1st of last year, I made it a promise that I was going to talk to one smart person every single day. This was part of being scrappy, is I don't have all the answers, and I just had to find people who maybe did. And so I looked at my network. I looked for who do I admire, both in the speaking and training industry, my clients, people in the association world, and companies who were meeting planners, and then people across all industry lines. And I set up calls with them. And every day I would have a Zoom call, and it would, under the premise of, hey, how are you doing? Let's touch base. But I told them, I have a specific question I'm going to ask you at the end. And at the end of all of these 20-minute conversations, I said, look, I've been hit really hard and I don't have the answers on how to fix it. What suggestions do you have for me to be able to relaunch, recreate, or pivot my career? And I'll be really honest with you, after talking to 70 or 100 people, 5 days a week for months and months and months, most people had no idea. They didn't know how to help me. Some people gave me ideas that I'd already heard of or I'd already thought of, or that were kind of dumb ideas. No offense to anybody, but it was like, that's just not going to work. However, over the course of, 6 or 8 months, 5 or 6 people gave me ideas that I was able to act upon and salvage, having income for the rest of the year and being able to pay the things I had to pay. So part of it for me was I couldn't just be alone. I couldn't just sit in meditation. I couldn't just rock in the corner. I had to talk to smart people and get other ideas and accept that most people wouldn't have the answer. But I knew that in there was going to be a nugget or two of information that would help me succeed.
You've hit on a couple of interesting things. Going back to the meditation part, how it's a practice, and I feel like unless you've done it, you're not really familiar with the benefits and values of it. And I'm curious, how would you explain the net benefits of meditation? Is it like the sort of exercise and ability to be able to clear your mind? How would you explain it to somebody that's never practiced it before?
Well, I think it'd be different for everybody who's practiced it. The people I've talked to who are avid meditators, we all do it differently and we all have some different ideas. I didn't go through formal training. I started off just like Googling like self-led meditation, self-led meditation. And I would just, do whatever I found. Then my brother recommended an app called Headspace. And I really like it. I don't think it's perfect, but I found Headspace to be able to give me that. It's timed, so it's 20 minutes every day. You can do 5, 10, or 15, but I always pick the 20 minutes. I block it into my calendar. I've only missed 2 days in about a year. And I sit and do it. And it's not that I'm clearing my mind, because I can't. I had tried to learn meditation 3 or 4 times throughout my life. And I always felt like I was failing. I never could stop my mind. And one of the things I learned is that thoughts are still going to come. And now when you're in the middle of your practice, you just say, oh, there's a thought. You admit that it's there, and then you try to put it away. And I learned to pay attention to the gaps. So Headspace has you focus on your breathing. And when, instead of focusing on the in-breath and the out-breath like they teach, a meditation teacher taught me to focus on the gaps. And so I now look for this in my life everywhere. I look for gaps between meetings. I look for gaps in the sidewalk. I look for gaps between meals, and I pay attention to where the gaps are, and I grab a hold of that. And so in my mind, when I'm thinking more than I'm not thinking. But when I have those gaps where my mind isn't racing, I grab onto it and I try to live in that for as long as I can. And what it's allowed me to do is to put that into practice in other places. So I'm kind of scared of heights, and I went ziplining in Costa Rica at Christmas time this year. And I was kind of scared each of the times that we did it. And what I did is I just used the meditation practice to calm myself, to remind myself that very few people die ziplining, and it wasn't going to be me. And so it's helped me in handling day-to-day things. And it certainly has helped me with the fear of watching my income disappear and then finding ways to bring it back.
Yeah, it sounds like a great mental tool to use to be able to change your current state that you may be in.
But it's, I've been doing it just over a year, and I probably 10 years from now will still be a novice.
Right. So a real skill to master. Well, let's jump back into the other part where you created this goal of connecting with one person a day. And what I liked about it is it's a tangible goal that you sort of built something small that you can, it's attainable. You can definitely do this, create it as a personal goal that you do as a routine. And then you mixed in this almost like a crowdsource Can I get some new ideas that are generated? Because that happens sometimes. You find yourself in a rut and you end up pedaling through the same circulation of thoughts and ideas. And that doesn't really go anywhere. You're just in the hamster wheel. But to be able to extend out and start all of a sudden get this new variety of ideas, and that ended up getting in that direction that paved that way forward.
It's one of the reasons I started my podcast 6.5 years ago. And even with these other podcasts that I host as the paid host, I get the advantage to talk to really smart business people about business, but I don't get to say, hey, let's make it all about me. So on these talk to one smart person a day calls, I make sure that I let the person know I'm interested in helping them. I want to catch up because in many cases, I know the people pretty well. They're part of my network, but I let them know that, look, I'm transparent. I'm going through a rough time, and this rough time is going to last a couple more years, and I've got to figure out how to do it. So one of the people I talked to was one of the executive directors at Stanton Chase. I had spoken at their partner meeting a few years ago. This person was a friend of mine. He lives in the town I live in. We had talked a few years ago about me coming to work with them. And I got him on the phone and I said, what do you think I can do? And he said, well, maybe one idea would be to revisit coming to work for me. And I really resonated with me this time. And the timing was right. I had a lot of free time in my schedule, but it was learning a whole new industry. So I'm 6 months in and I'm working on my first search, and it's exciting and there's a lot to do, but I feel like a kid who's lost at the mall because I'm new to it. And anytime you're new to something, I'll be honest, it's hard, it's scary, but I'm at a position where I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the skills that are needed to be really good with executive search are skills that I bring to the table. It's all about people and connection and bringing humans together for the benefit of everybody involved. But that came about from a call I made. And he said, let's visit this. And we talked about it for a few months and decided what it would look like. But it turns out it's the best company I've ever worked for. The people in the company, the culture, how helpful everybody is. So that's kind of exciting too, when you're in the midst of what's been a very tough year, to be surrounded with people who show that they care and that want to serve not only the clients, but the new kid on the block too.
Opportunities are there. You got to reach out for it. It doesn't come
Yeah.
to you naturally.
Yeah.
What other principles do you have for us?
Well, I think one of the principles is, around, being really trustworthy and doing what you say you're going to do. And I've recently gotten a coaching certification from the 𝐓𝐡𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐌 Institute, which is based around 20 years of research by a gentleman named David Horshager. And I really have always admired his work. He's a friend of mine, but, I think this whole idea of trust solves most problems in business really resonates with me. If you have a problem with sales, you might have a trust problem. If you have a problem with your employees and retention, it's probably a trust problem. If you're having problems, with your family or with your friends, there might be a trust problem. And so one of the principles I think that's really important is are you embracing everything around, walking the talk and being trustworthy?
Let's take that apart.
Okay.
How do you, because this is a good one. You're right. Fundamentally, a lot of our commerce and approaches to doing business with different people is based on trust ultimately. And I've noticed that I think it's a valuable skill. I've seen other executives have the ability to build trust with people quickly.
Well, some people think it takes forever to build trust, but one of the things that they teach at the 𝐓𝐡𝐨𝐽 Institute is that, yes, trust does take a long time in most cases. However, if you look at things like when there's a crisis or something like, 9/11, people who run down the street together suddenly trust each other. It's quick, go this way, turn here, do this. You trust the people around you if you're sharing an experience. And I've spent a career as a professional speaker teaching people how to connect better with humans. My moniker was I was the conference catalyst. If I spoke at your event or if I speak at your event in the future, people are going to engage and connect with one another better. And one of the things I always talked about is it's a cliche, but people will choose to do business, all things being equal, with people that they know, like, and trust. And I've spent years talking about that, and I fully believe it. I think, if you look at who you choose to buy a car from or who you choose to, buy anything from, it's usually the person you're going to trust more than someone you don't. You're not going to choose to do business with somebody you think is a shyster. However, the 𝐓𝐡𝐨𝐽 Institute has all of this research around it that actually puts real science behind what's happening with trust. And one of my favorite things I saw in some of their materials was that companies that have a high trust value with their customers are like 183% more profitable than companies with the average trust ratio. So it actually, trust impacts your bottom line. And I think that's something that's really important. And as I dive into this material and as I dive into this career, working to help place executives in high-end jobs and companies, everything comes down to trust. And, I think I've always known it, but right now I'm really focused on how do I bring that more into my life? And how do I make sure that I'm associating with people who live by these same values?
If you were to make a step-by-step guide in how to develop trust, what would be some of those steps?
Well, David has put it together in his work. His PhD was based around the 8 pillars of trust. And so he actually has a format around what those 8 pillars are. And it's not just from, his PhD work. He's continued every year with what he calls the Trust Outlook to release more information around this. And it continuously holds up what the 8 pillars are. So it's really, really important, to be able to make sure that you're kind of embracing, all of these. So I'll kind of go through, the 8 pillars with you really quick. And that is number one, it's consistency. People don't trust you if you do one thing one day and something different another day. So consistency really matters. Number 2 is clarity. And one of the things, if you think about this, people trust what's clear and they mistrust or distrust what's unclear. And yet at the same time, so often we say things in business that are very, kind of top of the funnel, throwaway words. Well, if it doesn't make sense, if it's not clear on what we're doing and where we're going, how can you expect people to believe in trust? So you've got to be very clear. The third one is compassion. And I think that goes without really any explanation. I think people trust the people who they know care. It's just, I think it's a natural thing. And that leads to the fourth one, which is character. I mean, at the end of the day, and all of these pillars sort of are intertwined, if you ask me, but again, you're going to trust people who are, exemplary in the character that they have with people that they deal with. Number 5 is contribution. We're going to trust people who roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty and do the work alongside of you. Think about the best bosses that you've ever had. The ones who have done the work or continuously still do the work. You trust them when they tell you how to get the job done because you know that they've been there and they're still doing it. Number 6 is competency. You have to be good at what you do. You have to be an expert. And I love this. David says that, look, I can trust you to watch my kids because you're a nice guy. You're not going to do anything wrong and all this, but I'm not going to trust you to give me a root canal because you're not a trained dentist. So in order to have trust, you have to have competency in that area. And then number 7 is the one why I got involved with getting a coaching certification through this program, because it ties directly to what I've spoken about for over a decade. And that is connection. Goes back to people they want to feel like you're part of the team. They want you in their network. They want you on their team. And if you are, they're more likely to trust you. And then the final one is commitment. And I think this is, as I look around just at like the people who I admire, of course, with that comes trust. It's people who are committed to what they're doing. They roll up their sleeves. It's not somebody who does 5 podcasts and let it slide because they didn't make $1 million. It's the person who's on episode 700 and they still haven't found their way, but they're slugging away. They're committed because they really love the art of the interview or whatever. I'm more interested in that person than the person who gave up along the way. So commitment matters. So, that's the framework that they teach. And I've been, like I said, spending the last 2 months getting certified, buried deep in the work of this organization. And it speaks to my soul.
Wow. I appreciate you going through that. Were there any, maybe even tips that stick out that you sort of find something that you can even build into your routine?
Well, I mean, I think where it really comes down to is, are you walking the talk? I see so many people. We live in what I call sort of the guru crazy world. There's all these people who are selling courses or they're, doing coaching. And then you meet them in person and, they're teaching people, like really good values. And then you meet them and they're a cheat or they're a schlock or whatever. So I think you got to walk the talk. And we all make mistakes. You're not going to do it all the time. You're not going to always have compassion. You're not always going to, be of exemplary character. You're not always going to be clear when you talk to people about who you are and what you're doing. So we don't need to look for perfection. We need to look for the trends.
I like it. Be genuine in who you are. You got any other principles for us?
God, you're putting me on the
So we got
thing.
time for one more. We
All
got
right. I think the other thing is for me, the other principle to live by is be nice, have fun. I try to give myself a motto every year that I live by. A couple of years ago, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make age 50 to 75 the best years of my life. And people said, well, what does that mean? And people even said, Tom, you've had a pretty great life. Like, how are you going to make 50 to 75 better than what you've done? And I said, I don't even know. And my first thing I came up with was the motto of try new things. And for 2 years, that was my motto that I lived by, and I still do. I'm scared of heights, and so I jumped off the Stratosphere Hotel and that sky jump thing they have. I was 30 pounds overweight, so I started running and learned to eat better. That was trying new things. I took up stand-up comedy at the age of 52, and over 2 years, I did 95 open mic nights until March of last year. And after I get my second shot of the vaccination, I'm going to go back and do the last 5, but I probably will do more than that. But stand-up comedy was a huge thing to try. But last year, my motto was simply be nice, have fun. And I found that, as a principle, that was a really good one to live by, because when things don't go your way or people are a jerk or whatever, just be nice and have fun. And that for me made a lot of difference.
within some of those examples, it sounded like you're challenging yourself as well.
Oh, I mean, the whole idea of make 50 to 75 the best years of my life was a huge challenge. And then, like I said, every year or so, I try to, give myself a motto for 2021. It's all around words that start with re. So it's reinvent, recharge, reclaim, etc. So it's any word that starts with re is my motto this year, because I'm having to relaunch my career. I'm going into a new industry. But last year's motto was be nice, have fun. And I've found that as a principal, we encounter a lot of people, and you can't always be nice and you can't always have fun. But if you try to set your set point at be nice, have fun, then when jerks come along, just be nice to them. You're in a situation you don't like, look for the fun. Who's the coolest person here? Find them in the room, whatever. So, it took me a long way to get to that answer, but I think be nice, have fun is super important.
I like it. You preserve your own character because you have some external elements that may otherwise tip a person into a different direction, but you don't let it get to you.
And life is short. I want to have more fun. The odds are I've only got, a little less than 50 years left to go around the sun. And, I'd rather have days that are fun than days that are sitting around bitching and crying.
You're determined to have fun. And it sounds like part of it is you're pushing yourself to do some of these things that you'd otherwise be uncomfortable of. It's make them fun.
Well, I mean, stand-up comedy. So I've been a professional speaker for years and I was good at it, but stand-up comedy is a different animal. Now I have the stage presence. I know how to hand a microphone. I know how to look at an audience. And that's what a lot of the younger comics don't know how to do. They might be funnier than me, but they can't stand there and own the stage. However, it doesn't matter how good my stage presence is. If my jokes aren't funny, it falls flat. Giving a speech to a corporate audience, they're all there. They're nice. They nod. They say, oh, yay. Even if you're mediocre, when you're giving a corporate speech, people are like, oh, that was nice. Comedy, people laugh or they don't. There is no other way around it. And so I had to learn to have fun even when I was sucking. And a lot of people do stand up once because it's painful and it's hard and it's nervous. The fun didn't come until about like the 25th open mic night.
Wow. But you stuck to it, and you got to the point where you made it fun.
Well, and the other thing is the be nice part. When you're in a game like the comedy scene, there's some jerks out there. And I'll tell you what, most of them are a lot younger than me. So they wrote me off because who's this old guy who's never done comedy before? He's older than my dad. And, I was nice to them, even if they blew me off, and I stuck with it. And I ended up making some great friends with some of the people in the local comedy scene.
That's a great story. Hey, Tom, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing some of your principles to leadership and success.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.